How much Bitcoin can MicroStrategy accumulate? I thought this was a really interesting question, and it's one more people should be discussing seriously. A lot of people have been trying to figure it out. On one hand, does MicroStrategy already own too much Bitcoin? And on the other, what's the upper limit of how much they can actually accumulate? There's a fascinating clip that not too many people seem to be talking about from Michael Saylor on the Block podcast, and I'm going to play it for you and then add some commentary after.
No, we'll just keep buying, right? The price is going to go up. It's going to get exponentially harder, and the price is going to go up exponentially higher, and we'll just keep buying. And at some point, if we get to 5% of the supply, Bitcoin's probably going to be a million a coin. And if we get to 7.5% of the supply, Bitcoin will be 10 million a coin. And then we'll be, if I'm lucky enough to grind to 10% of the supply, Bitcoin's going to be 50 million a coin, and someone will be whining that whatever, we have too much Bitcoin, but other people will have $400 trillion of wealth, so, our view is it's a ratchet, and we're just going to keep cranking on the ratchet, and there's massive leverage here. And I think everybody's winning if we do that.
So yes, that was Saylor discussing how MicroStrategy's Bitcoin acquisitions might scale in alignment with Bitcoin's price. And I thought it was fascinating because he essentially suggested that Bitcoin could hit $1 million per coin by the time MicroStrategy holds 5% of all Bitcoin. That would mean they've basically doubled the amount of Bitcoin they hold today. And to me, that actually sounds like a pretty fair assessment. If they're able to accumulate another 500,000 Bitcoins, they can likely do that through convertible notes and their new preferred equity, which, especially in the case of the preferred equity and other fixed income products, lets them tap into a new segment of capital. That capital likely wouldn't buy Bitcoin directly, but it would buy yield-bearing instruments, giving MicroStrategy more dry powder to buy Bitcoin. Saylor then takes it even further. If MicroStrategy is able to get 7.5% of all Bitcoin, he believes the price could hit $10 million per coin, which would mean they'd hold a little over 1.5 million Bitcoins. And then at 10% ownership, or roughly 2 million Bitcoins, he projects the price would reach $50 million per coin. It's an incredible vision, but what's especially interesting is that it implies diminishing returns to the strategy over time. In other words, the more Bitcoin MicroStrategy tries to buy, the more difficult it becomes because the act of acquiring that much Bitcoin itself pushes the price higher and higher. To put it into perspective, for them to go from where they are today to 2.1 million Bitcoins, they'd have to double their stack and then double it again. That's a massive jump, and it would likely require them to continue generating strong BTC yield like they did last year. In 2024, MicroStrategy generated 74% BTC yield, which is incredibly high for a company of that size. So if they're able to keep compounding at that rate, say over 2 years or 2 cycles, it's not out of the question that they could reach those numbers. And if that happens, the price of Bitcoin could, as Saylor said, be $50 million or more per coin. So I think the main takeaway here is that Saylor may be actually acknowledging some sort of ceiling to how much Bitcoin MicroStrategy can realistically accumulate, at least without sending the price into orbit. Maybe I'm misinterpreting his view, but that's how it sounds to me. And that's a really interesting idea, because to keep generating meaningful BTC yield at that current scale, it sort of implies the price of Bitcoin has to be absurdly higher, and possibly sooner than most people expect. Thanks for watching, everyone, and see you next time.